Hello, and welcome to the University 4.0 Dialogue series organized by Agora and Academia. I am George Sipos, the editor of the University 4.0 newsletter and host of the University 4.0 Dialogues. The aim of University 4.0 is to create a virtual space for debate about the future of higher education and, by extension, of our society in general. A debate made necessary by the daily advance of artificial intelligence, virtual and augmented reality environments, increased digitalization of industry, healthcare, public administration and government, to name just a few. And if they were unclear before 2020, at least for some, the COVID-19 pandemic has made crisis evident in so many areas of our society. We will meet here with leaders in education, and not only, in domains that impact the transformation of our society. We will discuss the good and the bad, the challenges and the opportunities in an open debate format, and we invite all of you to join us with comments, opinions, and suggestions. After all, we're all in this together, and education has an enormous impact on our lives and the way we build our future. I am joined today by Paul Joy, an expert in international education and one of my dear partners for such debates. As Joy Strategy Group Managing Director, Paul works with higher education institutions and service providers on partnership development, with a focus on both sustainability and education technology. Paul has extensive international education experience, having worked as an educator, administrator, and business professional in the United States and China from several distinct industry vantage points, including high school, university, and private-public partnerships. He holds a Bachelor's of Science in Biology from the University of California, San Diego, a Master of Arts in Asia-Pacific Study from the University of San Francisco, and an MBA degree from University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He is a member of RISC-V International, a LearnLaunch startup mentor, and he is based in Boston, Massachusetts. Paul, welcome to University 4.0 Dialogues. Always a joy to meet with you, sir.
George, we always have phenomenal conversations, and yeah, thanks so much for having me on today. It's always a great opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah. So I want to start you off with something we talked about on the phone a few days ago. And we chatted a little bit about this revolutionary, tremendous, U.S. government endorsement of international education. As you know, at the end of July, at the EducationUSA Forum, where many of us participated, there was a joint declaration of the United States Department of State, and Secretary Blinken was there. And in the opening remarks, and then the U.S. Department of Education, Secretary Cardona was there, Dr. Cardona was there, and then the Department of Commerce, of course, intervened and said, okay, we're all endorsing international education now. There was a summary put out, 4-page summary out there. I just want to read from this full joint statement of principles in support of international education, just a brief thing. Basically, the statement says, the United States cannot afford to be absent from the world stage. U.S. leadership and engagement makes an essential difference abroad as well as at home. Indeed, in today's interconnected world, our foreign and domestic policies are inextricably intertwined in pursuit of a preeminent goal, improving the lives of the American people. And then down a little bit, the robust exchange of students, researchers, scholars, and educators, along with broader international education efforts between the United States and other countries, strengthens relationships between current and future leaders. These relationships are necessary to address shared challenges, enhance American prosperity, and contribute to global peace and security. So now, Paul, this all sounds very nice. It's all structured, and it sounds like we're ready to go. Is this all we need? Are we ready for that much clamored and much desired U.S. national strategy for international education?
It's a really critical question because, frankly speaking, we have never seen this type of coordinated action on the part of the United States government. Like the State Department and Education and Commerce coming together, I think truly needs to be recognized for their achievements in this regard. The major question, however, is whether or not this goes far enough. Is this another example of something that is going to allow the United States to significantly increase its overall competitive advantage vis-a-vis other countries? Or is this simply window washing for something that has occurred over the last 4 years? And I think we need to be very open and candid about this, because simply because we had an election last year doesn't necessarily mean that the overall state of American competitiveness has actually changed. if anything, we need to be more honest with ourselves about the state of American competitiveness and look at all facets across the board, from our political system to our healthcare system, to our infrastructure, to our universities, to our entrepreneurship and our capital markets, to what's happening on the innovation front, to truly recognize the opportunity that we have here. And George, this is something, I mean, maybe I might be a minority in all of this, but unless we truly seek to change the way in which universities seek to attract international students, ultimately I find this statement to be a little bit, a little bit short-sighted. We need to look at the way in which we need to change major systems across our country in order for universities to remain competitive vis-a-vis their international counterparts. And I think, and kind of starting with this,
go ahead.
Yeah, kind of starting with this. I mean, in 2012 to 2019, Harvard University actually did a study looking at U.S. competitive advantage. And one of the things that they found, and this is worth mentioning, is the fact that what troubles us the most across the country is our flailing and deteriorating political system. Like, it's one thing to say that we have, open-ended, robust discussions occurring in Washington based upon mutual respect and competitiveness. But unfortunately, we've basically seen a deterioration of this system over the last 30 years, which, if it doesn't go addressed, will result in increasing deterioration of many of our other competitive advantages, including our ability to attract international students.
I think that's a very important point, Paul. I think we have a tendency somehow, maybe not just in the United States, maybe in general as humans, I guess, we have a tendency to look at things in clusters, And any student of literature, of storytelling, of philosophy, of history will tell you, look, everything is interconnected. Yeah. I mean, we are determining now that we will put, and I'm saying I'm a big supporter of a national strategy for international education. Right. I think we need that. I completely agree. I mean, NAFSA has been pushing for a long time for that, and I agree with them. Is it possible at United States level? I don't know. I'm not sure that it's possible because of how the Department of Education functions in this country. But we can't look at education as an independent, standalone pillar, like you pointed out. It's all part of an infrastructure that needs to connect. Right. Not only that, but it's the mentality of people. I mean, 50% of the people of America just a few months ago voted to keep in place somebody who embraced a discourse of xenophobia, of anti-immigration, of anti-international. Are they done now just because the new president is in the White House?
The answer, George, is no. And there's another person that I follow. His name is also George Packer from The Atlantic. He actually highlighted the fact that we actually have 4 different Americas interacting with each other.
I remember that.
One, his first America was free America, free enterprise America, which is obviously very strong, and perhaps exemplified by the number of tax cuts that we've had over the last 40 years. The second is smart America, those that think that we need to raise up our highest higher educational institutions. But then we have this. We also have just America and real America. And real America, I would argue, are the individuals that perhaps do have a point. We haven't seen major income increases across the United States in well over 35 years. And those people are ones that are struggling. Like, there's a lot of counties across the country, it has been measured by Opportunity Insights and other demographers, that haven't seen income increases in the last 30 years. And that's something that hasn't significantly changed. And so how do we as a country move out of this pandemic in a way that actually lifts everybody up, not just the 1 or the 10%, and also makes it possible for us to come together to actually redo immigration reform? This is something we get into the weeds in this a lot at conference after conference, looking at what the proposals actually are. But I think a lot of people forget that we haven't seen significant immigration reform since 1990. 1990.
Right, right,
I mean, I was 8, right?
right.
And so if this continues, like if we don't see significant reform in, for H-1Bs and other types of, other inputs that come into our immigration system over the next 5 years, you could definitely see how this might, continue on for another 10, 20, 30 years, which would put the United States in a very difficult position competitively compared to other countries.
And isn't that key? The ability to get a work visa in this country that's been diminished tremendously, not just in the past 4 or 5 years, but actually overall it's been diminished. I mean, we've added restrictions upon restrictions upon restrictions. You know what? We've seen a decrease to by comparison with Australia, with Canada, even with the United Kingdom. And we wonder why that is, but indeed international students, they make a tremendous investment. I mean, for anybody out there in international education, we all know how much they pay to be getting a degree in the United States, much more than.
And they take on a lot of the risk associated with this too. I mean, for those that make it work, for those that scale up brand new companies within genomics or information technology or the semiconductor space and fintech and energy and in transportation, it's wonderful. But unless you're going into like a really high-end, a really strong institution that has a background of developing, skills and leadership tendencies and networks, it's difficult, to make an argument as an ASCU or a community college to make the same risk, the same investment, with uncertain return. And that's something that I think we lose track of. And at the same time, I mean, universities right now are flush with cash. There's a lot of money that's been put out from the Department of Education. And so figuring out ways in which to transform institutions in line with development challenges, transformation-based challenges, is going to be extremely key, for local and regional economies in order to make it through over the next 10 years.
Absolutely.
And that includes, I mean, look, autonomous transportation is something that is knocking on the door, right? It is going to happen. And so if you're an institution, should you really be building another parking structure? Should you really be thinking, or should you be thinking about, maybe we should make some investments in electric and autonomous transport to prepare for what's coming in 2030?
Absolutely.
As one given example. I don't know.
It's an example, right?
Right.
I think we're losing track of the fact also, Paul, that we are in many ways. I mean, you're basically touching on this. We are so disconnected from the job market. We are so disconnected from what would actually prepare. And I'm not saying that universities should prepare workers. That is not my point. But I think we should also have that component included. I mean, if we're up to me, I think we should prepare only philosophers. I think that the world would be maybe a better place with philosophers and poets, like Plato said. But that's not the world we live in.
No.
And our students want to have a clear, pragmatic return on investment, if you will. And we're not quite providing that. So I think that you're absolutely right about this U.S. declaration. The danger in my mind is that we end up with the declaration, and that's it. It's a joint statement. Everybody's clapping. Everybody's happy. We're celebratory. And then what? I mean, we need the concrete results. We need the concrete, visa reform, immigration reform, job market reform, the ability for the students to be attractive. We need to look at our visa. I mean, even before the Trump administration, we had so much of the visa for a lot of the students who wanted to come to the United States was left at the whims of the consular officers, who just pure and simple determined that they don't want to allow a student to come to the United States, regardless of all the financial proof that they had to show and so on and so forth, like academic proof and so on and so forth.
That entire system needs to be reworked in a way that reduces risk on the part of individual students and in the institutions that seek to recruit them. Sorry, recruit is the institutions that seek to enroll and empower these students. And especially in countries that haven't been traditional sources or traditional places of inbound international students, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, in one of our previous dialogues, I was talking about risk management and risk assessment and all that. And I think universities still lack you know, that component of risk management. When they do an international education strategy, you know, you will see your like a traditional, everybody knows how to do partnerships. You know, we keep talking about, oh yeah, let's sign an agreement and it's all good, you know. Why do we do it? Well, so we can add more universities to our roster. Look, we have universities all over the world. We don't do much with them, but they're there, they're listed, you know. Well, what is the risk behind that? What are we achieving through that? And so on and so forth. All these are questions that are never answered. And I think that I don't want to move away too far from we do that when we talk, we move away too far from the topic at hand. But I think that for the fact that many of our universities, most of our universities are actually so autonomous, so independent, you know, there comes a point when if we have a centralized view, a national view on international education, then maybe a lot of us in universities, in agencies and so on, will kind of have to rally around that view.
Yeah.
Because then we can have a strategy. But if people still do whatever they want and they go in whatever direction, because you know what, the Department of State cannot rule us and cannot tell us what to do.
No.
Then what's the point of that?
Well, I think one of the things, if this actually occurs, I think it would be a major result out of the joint declaration. But like we all know that Fulbright scholars, that's the highest of the high. That's a start. That's a step. You know, if you're able to get a Fulbright scholarship, that's something that you're able to put on a CV for the rest of your career. But we also know that the acceptance rates for Fulbright scholars is much lower than it was when the program was originally instigated, right? And part of that has to do with funding certainty. And so, you know, if we really want to encourage international education, we definitely have to look at home, and we have to find ways to give resources so that we can not just have a 3 or 5 or 10% acceptance rate, that we need to get back to a 20 or 30% acceptance rate, which is still competitive, but it's not impossible, right?
No. Not to talk about empowering universities and empowering students and helping students travel abroad themselves. I mean, our American students don't want, can't, won't travel abroad. Why? Well, it's anybody's guess. I mean, money, of course, is a major issue.
Yeah.
And we don't have enough resources to actually support our students to go abroad. On one hand, on the other hand, there's always a pressure within university systems to have study abroad programs generate revenue. So then it's a back and forth between we want to send students abroad, but in the same time, they have to pay us to go abroad. So we have to figure that one out. What about American students going abroad while international students coming, and so on and so forth? I think that we can go each of those paragraphs in the joint declaration, the joint statement, and sort of you know, deconstruct it and ask the questions around it. I think all in all, we can agree that it's a good step forward. I think that I'm curious to see what's going to happen over the next 3-4 years in terms of implementing and materializing something from this.
Is there going to be bipartisan consensus? And bipartisan meaning 60 votes in the United States Senate.
Yep.
To actually have a concrete strategy that incorporates national security, American competitiveness, international education, all of these things that we ultimately care about, but to do so in a way that's accepted by, you know, the political class. And right now, I'm just not sure that that's the case. I'm not sure that you end up having 60 votes in the United States Senate for, you know, doubling or tripling Fulbright scholarship opportunities, or, you know, significantly reforming the way in which students are able to get access to visas and increase the certainty that they will be able to attend what, you know, the institution that they ultimately choose.
And in a way, yeah, I absolutely agree. And in a way, you know, I think that the major question will always be, well, why bother with a national strategy? I mean, look, the 2019 international students, or 2020, brought $39 billion to the American economy, and there was no strategy. They just came because they want to. And this creates that vicious cycle where basically you're saying, well, we're the best anyway, so they're going to come.
Right.
If they want to, they will come, and they will put the money in our universities, in our communities, in our cities.
Yeah.
will that go on forever?
And the other problem is, I mean, the number of cities, the number of states that they actually are looking at. I mean, it's, you know where it is, George.
Oh, yeah.
It's New York, California, and to a certain extent, Massachusetts.
Yep.
I mean, Texas has certainly seen increases, as well as Pennsylvania and Florida as well. But overall, I mean, the middle part of the country, large swaths of the country are simply not, you know, they're not seeing the benefit to the level that they perhaps can.
Right. No,
and that's something that has to be ultimately recognized and addressed. Because it shouldn't just be about the student's ability to pay. It shouldn't be about them taking on the full financial burden when they get here. It's about their long-term contribution if, in fact, they decide to stay. Whether it's in Idaho or Alaska or Maine or New Hampshire or Iowa or whatever it is. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Paul, this is great. We'll wrap this up here for the U.S. education. I'm going to ask one more question.
Yeah.
But just overall in international education, because you and I have been in the field for so long, you know, and I like to ask everybody in these dialogues about, you know, what do you see in international education when you put your like, you know, strategist and futurologist hat on? What do you see in international education in the next 5 to 10 years?
You know, the institutions, I think, that are really doing a tremendous job in terms of innovating and creating new types of programs and partnerships. I mean, number one, you can't ignore what Arizona State University has done and continues to do. Like, there's a reason they are the most innovative institution in the entire country. And a large part of that stems from their overall, like, their direction to internationalization. That doesn't stem from having a concrete internationalization strategy. You know, maybe not. They are a fairly decentralized institution, as many of those professionals will tell you. But at the same time, they're maintaining, you know, academic rigor. They're maintaining, you know, medium level admissions, you know, admission requirements, and they're attracting, you know, thousands of international students on an annualized basis. The second institution I would also look at is the University of Arizona. Their microcampus initiative, I think, has significant potential over the next 10 to 15 years, especially given the large increases of international students, of overall higher education students, not just tertiary, of students that are looking for additional opportunities to study. In terms of institutions that probably need a bit of an upgrade, I would point to my own, the University of California system. I would say needs to do a significant rethink in terms of its overall strategy. I think it's far too dependent on one single country for undergraduate students, and I think that's something that needs to be considered and looked at over the long period of time. But overall, I think it's quite fascinating to see, number one, the number of new partnerships, new companies, new service opportunities, and the growth of those particular opportunities in line with what institutions are trying to do. I mean, T&E is a hot topic. It's something that perhaps, you know, hasn't necessarily been looked at quite closely by a lot of given institutions, but it's something that's going to continue. The other kind of overall trend I see occurring is just the increase of hybridization. You're starting to see already a blend between online and on campus. And that's something that's not going to go away because of the pandemic. Like, students want to be on campus, that's a good thing. But at the same time, if you're sitting in a lecture hall with 400 or 800 total people, there's a better way to do that. And so I think you're going to start to see institutions kind of segment their overall education with hybrid-based opportunities, hopefully focused with you know, professors that are based locally, so students can actually have a chance to connect with them. Yeah.
All right, that's great. Thank you very much. Always a joy meeting with you. No pun intended. Or
no pun intended, right? Yeah.
Pun intended. Pun intended.
I'm used to it.
Thank you, Paul. We will have your contact information for our viewers right after the end of our dialogue, and they can get in touch with you and continue this conversation as they would like. So thank you, and have a good afternoon.
All right, thanks, George.